Visit us at Eduvvo. Thank you for calling Eduvvo.
So now that we've created the movement animation, I'm going to go through and show you how we would set up the jump animations. Now be aware that when we set this up, we're not actually going to be able to test it, unfortunately, because we haven't set up the player to jump just yet. But it does mean that when we get around to creating a player controller, we're going to be able to jump without any fuss. So I want to explain how this works. If I was to double click on the transition rule between movement and jump start, what I would see is this: can enter transition. Now if this is equal to true, that means that the second that's equal to true, this is going to jump into the jump start state. Okay, so how do I do that? It's rather simple. I set up a rule here that tries to get the pawn owner. If it can get the pawn owner, then we're going to say we're going to get the movement component of the pawn, and when they're going to ask the movement component, hey, is the player falling? And if that's true, we can enter the jump state. Okay? Now, when we enter the jump state, what do? That's simple. When we enter the jump state, we want to play an animation for the player to begin jumping. Okay? So all I need to do here is I need to go to the asset browser, type in jump, and I can see that there's a couple of these here. The one I'm going to go with is going to be jump forward. If I plug this in the situation where we were jumping, this animation would now play. So next up, what I'm going to do is say, okay, so that's how we start the jump, but how do we get into the mid-air jump? Well, that's rather simple. To transition between jump start and jump mid, all I need to do is, if I type in get relevant, see, if I type in get relev, we have get relevant anim length, get relevant anim time, fraction remaining. Now what this lets me do is look at an animation that I've set to play anywhere in my graph, and if it's currently playing, I can return the value that says how long is it until it's finished. And if it's nearly finished the jump intro animation, so if this is less than or equal to, say, 0.1, then we can enter into the transition to do the next section, which is going to be the mid jump. So when we're in the jump mid, all I have to do is plug in the falling animation. So the falling animation is, if I highlight this, you can see it. It's just her doing that. So I'm going to plug that in. I'm then going to go back. And for me to go from jump mid to the landing animation, I then need to check, well, are we still falling or not? So if you think about how we go from movement to jump start, I'm doing a check to say, check if the pawn is falling. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go to my jump mid to landing, and all I'm going to say here is rather simple. If this is not true, not that, we can now go into the movement state. And that's all it takes for us to go into the landing state. So to go into the landing state, we're then going to play another animation, which in here is called land. Oops. And again, you can see it kind of playing there. It's as she hits the ground, her knees kind of buckle a bit. Compile, save. And finally, for us to go from landing to movement, all I really need to do here is check if the landing animation is finished. So if the landing animation is finished, which is time remaining for the player land, if this is, I don't know, let's go less than or equal to, let's do 0.1 again. And that's all it takes to add in the functionality to cycle between a bunch of animations and end up in the movement state again. So that's it for going through the basic locomotion chain. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a little function that is going to make our character look a bit strange, but it's just going to make the character jump every now and then, because if they jump, you'll be able to see what's happening. Okay? So if I go to my controller base, and I say set timer by event every 7 seconds, I'm going to want to get my controlled pawn, and I'm going to do, if I was to get this. Now, we can't just get a pawn and call jump, and the reason for that is what I would need to do is I would need to create a new event that's just going to be called force jump. Plug this into here, and in much the same way as before, where I got the controlled pawn, I checked if that was valid. I then cast it to a character. Again, we're going to see if that's valid. I'm then going to get this and call jump, and that works because a pawn doesn't have the function jump in it, but a character does. Okay, and I've set this to every 7 seconds. So if we were to hit play and watch her, it's good timing. There you go. So she did a little jump there. She doesn't quite know why she's jumping. So there you go. See how she jumped up and played the animation correctly. There we go. So she's cycling through the animations, and we now definitely know it's working. I'm going to go back into my controller base and just delete this last little forced jump business, because we don't want to do that. Compile save. So we've now got a character that is capable of more advanced locomotion. So from here, we now need to go ahead and start creating some actual player input. Coming up next.